think we're good. All right, Minister.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to be here today to provide an update on how student learning is progressing during the COVID-19 pandemic. Let me first start by echoing what the Premier confirmed last week during the announcement of Alberta's relaunch strategy. In-person classes will be cancelled for the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year. However, teacher-directed at-home learning will continue based on the direction I provided to schools back on March 20th. Since beginning at-home learning, we have seen tremendous uptake within our education system. Schools and teachers across this province quickly adapted to our new reality and have worked very, very hard to ensure our students continue to learn. Across Alberta, we are seeing teachers and schools use multiple approaches when it comes to delivering course content to their students. Roughly 91% of public, separate, francophone, and charter school authorities are offering online learning to their students. Approximately 53% are emailing homework to their students, and about 47% are sending paper-based products, homework, and such to their students. This approach is working, and thanks to the hard work of teachers across this province, our students are receiving the core knowledge they require to ensure that they progress. We recognize that the transition to at-home learning has not been easy, and that many students may not have access to the equipment they require. I'm pleased to share with you today that school authorities and our government have provided approximately 60,000 devices, including laptops, Chromebooks, tablets, and iPads, to students as they learn from home. School authorities have prioritized providing devices to students based on need, focusing on those who don't have access to devices, have complex needs, or are high school students. In addition, the Métis Nation of Alberta, in partnership with Rupert's Land Institute, has purchased over 2,200 devices for self-identified Métis students across Alberta. Our education system and their communities have come together to support our children's education, and I cannot thank everyone enough for stepping up and demonstrating true Alberta spirit during this very, very difficult and challenging time. We are also working on detailed reentry plans for the upcoming school year. While we do not yet know what health guidelines will be in place by then, or which stage in Alberta's relaunch we will be at, we are actively collaborating with our education partners on a reentry plan that is based on 3 potential scenarios. Scenario 1, that I know you and many others, myself included, hope for, is that for schools to be open and operating as much as possible under normal conditions. For scenario 2, we are envisioning an environment where schools are generally open, but with some health restrictions in place. This could include PPE measures or physical distancing guidelines for certain classes. And scenario 3 is that teacher-directed at-home learning continues. Last week, I spoke about this with school boards, teachers, administrators, and other staff, parents, and students themselves. They have given us some excellent feedback on various aspects of what things could look like in September under each of the 3 scenarios. As we progress in our planning, I will share a first draft of our reentry plan with them first and foremost, and then I will be gaining further input from them. I want to be clear at this time, no decisions have been made on any aspect of the reentry plan. These items are only 3 of many, many considerations before us. Any proposals that ultimately appear in the reentry plan will be subject to approval by the Chief Medical Officer of Health, will be aligned with Alberta's relaunch strategy, and will honour collective agreements. I know for families it can be challenging to know what to do and where to turn for support and guidance during at-home learning. This is especially true for children with disabilities and their parents, where changes from the traditional delivery process may present even more challenges. To help with these concerns, Alberta Education has created a helpline for parents and families. This will be managed by staff at Alberta Education who can assist with answering questions or directing parents to resources provided by their school authorities. The phone number is 780-422-6548. It can be reached toll-free by first dialing 310-0000. Staff can also be reached via email at studentsupport@gov.ab.ca. At this time, I want to express a very sincere thank you to all the parents, other family members, teachers, and school staff for their great efforts to keep our students learning during this unprecedented time. I've seen many examples of Albertans rising to the challenge of coming up with creative solutions to support student learning. What you have been able to accomplish in less than 2 months is truly remarkable and inspiring, and I just really want to thank each and every one of you. Before I conclude, I want to briefly share a message with our graduating students. My office has received numerous calls and emails from grade 12 students who are saddened at the cancellation of their graduation ceremonies and celebrations, and their disappointment is extremely warranted. I totally understand. I want to stress that while this situation is not ideal, you should be proud of all that you have accomplished. You have come far throughout your 12 years of education, and you have a lot to be proud of. There will come a time where you can celebrate with friends and family, but for now, I just ask that you reflect on these 12 years and do not undervalue this great achievement of yours. I am proud of you. Your province is proud of you, and I know that your teachers, your friends, and your family are proud of you. So please, please celebrate in your own way at this time. Thank you. I will now answer all questions.
All right, so we're going to go to the phones now. Just for everyone on the line, we're going to ask that we limit to one question, one follow-up. So with that in mind, moderator, could you please put forward the first caller?
First is David Staples with the Edmonton Journal. Go ahead, David.
I believe there's studies that have shown that some kids fall behind during the summer months in education, while other kids, continue to read and learn through the summer. So my concern is that group of kids who, when they're off, fall behind in learning, and in this situation, maybe tuning out and kind of falling between the cracks, and it might be a large number of students. What would you say to parents who have those concerns that the learning is kind of inadequate in that group of students?
Thank you for
under these circumstances?
Well, thank you for the question, David. I know that teachers and the staff have been working really, really hard to connect with all the students. Of course, there are some students that have decided not to continue their learning, but that the vast majority are actually working, and in some cases I'm hearing working even harder than they would normally have had, as there are many eyes on them watching what they're doing, particularly with their parents at home overseeing their studies. That being said, we know that there may be some gaps. We don't anticipate great gaps because we do have excellent teaching going on. And we will be working as we launch our reentry plan to look at where those gaps are and what we can do to address them. So I've been working very actively with all our education partners, including the Alberta Teachers Association, the Alberta School Boards Association, the Parent Association, and the College of Alberta School Superintendents to really look at all of the issues. And there's many issues surrounding the at-home learning. This, while it has been challenging, I have just been so impressed at how everyone has stepped up to really look at the needs of the student and address those needs.
And if David has a follow-up, we can definitely take that. If not, moderator, we can go to the next caller.
Well, my follow-up is, I know in a country like Taiwan, they have a system in place where there's PPE used in the schools, and the students, if one student is found with the virus, they shut down the class. If two students, they shut down the schools. And they kind of go class by class, school by school in this manner in terms of future shutdowns. Is that kind of very targeted shutdown as opposed to a system-wide shutdown being looked at? And I ask this particularly because in Edmonton, in northern Alberta, there's hardly any cases anymore right now. So, would that kind of thing, as opposed to shutting down the whole province, would you look at a more targeted shutdown in the future if necessary?
Absolutely. We'll be looking at all options. Of course, we will be guided by the Chief Medical Officer of Health and their recommendations. But as was indicated with the larger relaunch in the province, that there is possibilities for regionalization to look at bringing in measures for regional areas, and I believe we would be looking at something similar. Again, this is all being done in consultation with our education partners, guided by the health, the Chief Medical Officer, and the health requirements that we will be looking to face. We are definitely, as part of the relaunch plan, looking for health protocols to be provided to us and to inform how we would enact, say, PPE requirements within the classroom, social distancing within a classroom, or even on, buses and other forms of transportation. So there are many, many issues that we're looking at, and that is certainly something that we are discussing.
Perfect. Moderator, could you please put forward the second caller?
Next is Kevin Nimick with CTV Calgary. Go ahead, Kevin.
Minister, your government is sending back several businesses to work in the next couple weeks here. Presumably that's a lot of parents who were supervising their kids at home, taking care of their kids, and facilitating some of this education. How is that going to work if these people are now back at work? Why aren't kids going back to school as well?
Well, again, in conjunction with the recommendations made by the Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, that nothing has changed from her initial recommendation that we refrain from in-school classes indefinitely at this point in time. So we are going with that recommendation. And because the window of our school year is fast closing, typically most school divisions have their last sessions the last week of June. So we're taking that recommendation and we're moving forward with that. Our focus now is to really have a very strong relaunch strategy to put in place when we are able to resume in-school classes, or as I indicated, we have 3 scenarios we're looking at, and we are able to work between all of those scenarios with our education partners.
Okay. Earlier you said this approach is working in regards to education outcomes or the success of education at home. How do you know that?
Well, we're getting great feedback from our superintendents, mainly, and our school boards, because they're closely monitoring what is happening in the schools. The principals, schools are still open for our administrative staff to be there, and they're still gathering that information. Teachers are connecting with their colleagues, with their principals, with their superintendents, and so we're getting that valuable information back. Is it ideal? No, but they're just doing tremendously well given the circumstances, these challenging times that we have. And we know that it varies across the province as well.
All right, moderator, could you please put forward the next caller?
Next is Sarolta Saski with City News. Go ahead, Sarolta.
Hi, yes. So, Minister, if you follow through with scenario 2, so for instance using PPE, how much extra would that cost the province to implement that into all the schools across the province? Would you be asking for additional funds for that, or will families have to cover the cost?
Again, all of those items that you've just mentioned, we are looking at that. We are in consultation with the Chief Medical Officer and those that are in a position to tell us what those costs would be. That being said, talking to the Alberta Teachers Association and school boards, et cetera, they've raised all of these issues and many more that have a financial impact, and we as a province would be looking at how that is looked at. But right now, our focus is to develop this strong plan so that we know what all of the pieces are that we need to be looking at and how we can come back effectively in any one of those scenarios. And also to be able to transition between those scenarios because we know that COVID, this pandemic changes day to day, sometimes hour to hour, that we may have to be able to transition between scenarios very, very quickly. So we are looking at all of those aspects, including how many PPEs would be appropriate for a child to utilize in a day or for a teacher, and many, many other things that have to be looked at.
And if at-home learning continues, so scenario 3, will we see any cuts to education in September?
Looking at scenario 3, as I've said earlier, full funding was to be restored and is to be restored as of July 1st. The decisions that were made early on were very difficult decisions to make, quite frankly. And, every employee that we have, every staff member is a valued member of our staff team. Those decisions were made with the information that we had at the time and a very quickly evolving pandemic with very high costs. That being said, my anticipation, actually yesterday we rolled out the funding profiles to every school division across this province, and every school division across this province now knows what they can anticipate to receive in September for the upcoming 2020-21 school year, and every single school division will see an increase in their funding.
All right, moderator, could you please put forward the next caller?
Next is Kelly Kreiderman with the Globe and Mail. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my call. Two are my questions, I should say. Are you looking at what Quebec is doing, and how much will that inform your decision as you look to make a decision in September? And I'm sorry if I missed this at the beginning of the conference. Is there one of the 3 options that you are favoring?
Well, so to answer your second question first, the 3 options, obviously we would all like to see the first option, scenario 1, where we can return to mostly normal school classes opening in September. That being said, we do realize that we do not know how the pandemic will continue over the next course of months. We also know that on the larger relaunch plan, education, K-12 education, is on a level 2. So right now, it's too early to say which scenario we will be in at that time. The best plan is to plan, hope for the best and plan for the worst. So we are looking at all possible scenarios. The other question in regards to Quebec, every province has to make decisions, of course, guided by their chief medical officer, and as well what makes sense for their province. So I won't comment on what they're choosing to do. My focus is on ensuring that we have the absolute best plan in place for when we can return to school, and that we're doing the best for our students to ensure that there is a continuity of learning during this very, very challenging time.
And Kelly, we have room for a follow-up if you have one.
I was just wondering, talking to my daughter's teacher, she said she is able to do only 10 to 20% of the usual work that they would be able to do in the classroom. Do you have worries about a whole year, essentially a whole year of schooling being lost when we talk about the combined loss from this school year and what could be lost next year and the effect that could have on students as a whole?
Of course, these are concerns of all of myself and my whole department, as well as all of the education partners, but also things that we're looking to mitigate and to ensure that we're trying to be proactive. So we definitely had come forward with a plan with the number of hours and the course content in terms of making sure that we address the core subject matters, but we do know that early in the next year that there will be things that need to be addressed, and that's why I felt it's very, very important, as do all my education partners, that we come together and have those discussions and how we're going to relaunch education have a strong reentry plan when we get back together, in whatever way that looks like, so that we are addressing those very, very concerns that you just mentioned.
Thank you. Moderator, could you please put forward the next caller?
Next is Eva Ferguson with the Calgary Herald. Go ahead, Eva.
Yes, thank you. I've had conversations with a lot of parents about what a return to school would look like. They feel they're being kept in the dark and that they're not part of these conversations. Minister, you've said that you've had a lot of feedback from parents about a return to school, and I'm wondering if you could speak publicly about what some of that feedback looked like in terms of social distancing specifically, and whether you're looking at, for instance, some kids coming in the morning, others only in the afternoon, staggering days, or moving desks apart.
Right.
I'm wondering if you can address that more specifically for concerned parents.
Absolutely. So we've been talking very closely and very often with the Alberta School Councils Association, which represents parents across right across the province. And what we're hearing is the feedback that they're getting from their school councils and from the parents at large, that all of those items that you just mentioned should be part of the re-entry plan discussion. And so they are very much. The discussion guide that was sent out and has been discussed with our education partners has all of these components. There were 15 major questions and a lot of sub-questions underneath it. I always welcome feedback from parents and have been getting many who have just felt the need to write and share their personal experience, and I always welcome that, and I encourage more of that to happen. I also encourage parents to work through their school councils to ensure that their feedback gets to the Alberta School Councils Association. As I said, we've been working closely with them. We'll continue to work with them and continue to look forward to hearing more from parents. But all of those items that were mentioned by yourself, Eva, we are considering and looking at. Everything is on the table, but no decisions have been made yet. We need to ensure that we're hearing all the voices before those final decisions are made. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just as a follow-up, I wanted to ask as well, from last week, Premier Kenney, as part of his relaunch strategy, talked about possibly considering some summer program for special needs students. I'm wondering if that is also still a possibility and what that might look like in different parts of the province.
So summer school, again, is something that is part of the reentry plan discussions. School divisions right now some school divisions, not all, but they do offer summer school programs, and we would be looking for summer school programs for this summer for those school divisions that are willing and wanting to offer them to be able to continue, provided that they follow, of course, Dr. Hinshaw's guidelines, health guidelines. We are looking at all of those items. As I said, no final decisions have been made yet, but definitely looking at meeting the needs of all our students.
All right, so the next caller will be our final caller. Moderator, could you please put them through?
Yeah, we have Dean Bennett with the Canadian Press. Go ahead, Dean.
Thanks. Afternoon, Minister. Yeah, I can appreciate that these decisions are still being made. It sounds like you're hoping for one, but planning for scenario 2 or 3. I'm assuming that you've given the medical officer of health deadlines and you've given your staff deadlines, because obviously whatever decision you make, if it's 2 or 3, people are going to need to to plan their lives, and whether or not they're going to have a job in September. So what deadlines have you given the Chief Medical Officer of Health? We'd like a recommendation by this date. And what date can you tell parents by this date we'll tell you which scenario we're pursuing?
Well, as you know, Dean, the pandemic doesn't follow our deadlines. So unfortunately, it is ever evolving, and some days it's day to day, some days it's hour to hour. Things are changing. It's a very fluid situation. As far as the Chief Medical Officer, I have not given her any deadlines. She works independent from my department. My department, on the other hand, I have given instruction to work closely with our education partners, and that as soon as that all of us feel comfortable that we have a very solid go-forward plan in Scenario 1, Scenario 2, and Scenario 3, that we would finalize those plans and make them public as soon as possible. We're hopeful that that would happen within the next few months, or sorry, not few months, few weeks. And again, Dr. Hinshaw works independently from my department, and we take guidance from her sage advice. Yeah, I appreciate that, but at the same time, it's always going to be moving, no matter what day you make a decision. So, but you can't just sort of, the day before school's set to open say, surprise, we're doing Scenario 3. You've got to give people some lead-up time. Well, so it doesn't absolutely, sound like it doesn't sound like you have but it doesn't sound like you have a date in mind. Like, I would think you'd say, okay, look, by July 30th, we need to know which way we're going, given the fact that we may have to change, but we need to give people a heads up. So by July 30th, I want a plan in place. Doesn't sound like you have a date, though. At this point in time, we are developing that strong plan, and then as we move forward and have those strong scenarios fully fleshed out and able to share with the general public, then we will get our guidance and go from there. I believe it's too early to make that deliberation at this point in time, but as soon as we have that information, we will absolutely be sharing it with everyone, because we know how important it is. We know how, I'm a parent of 7 children myself. I know how important it is to have that information and have it early. So as soon as we can give that information, we absolutely will.
All right, thank you, everyone. If anyone has any further questions, my contact information is on the news release, and feel free to email or call me. Thanks.
Thank you.